But those questions felt like 10 steps behind and not 10 steps ahead. I guess that's correct, if she says so. Hi, I'm Pierre, and welcome to Neon Reactions. Folks, we are back with Rotten Mango and Stephanie Sue and her trial coverage of the full P. Diddy trial. And yes, I am so here for that. Today's video is called I Got 4K to Rub Baby Oil on Her and Diddy Watched in a Corner. A male worker testifies. Yes, things are going crazy. Things are going to be nuts. I can't wait for Cassie to testify. That will be a good one. But for now, let's take a look at this, not talk all too much. Folks, before we do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share the video. Hop on over to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Check out my Discord, my podcast with V. We just recorded the 3rd episode and it was really fun. Yes, and if you have anything to tell me, you know, the comment section is the place to go. But now, it's time for a Rotten Mango.
Bada bing, bada boom.
There is one person in the courtroom that is probably having a worse day than Sean Combs. But first I have to set the scene. There are no cameras allowed in the federal courtroom. So these are just the things that we've noticed. Don't take it as fact. I feel like recently, the past few days, they have been pumping the AC in the courtroom. There are speculations that the jurors are getting very sleepy after lunch. We don't know how true that is. That's like the
1 second, I was just looking. Am I recording? Yes, I am.
whispers in the courthouse hallways. We're all just shivering. We're all cold. The defendant comes out wearing his old man in church that could never hurt a fly outfit, collared shirt, sweater, trousers. He really only gets like 5 sweaters, 5 collared shirts, I believe. So he's wearing the same things on repeat. Yeah.
Huh.
And there will just be these moments where Sean Combs has his reading glasses on and he hasn't been staring. So like, I feel like as the trial has evolved, everything that Sean Combs has done has also evolved. I don't know if it's because things have gotten a lot more serious day by day, or if
strategy,
maybe he's being coached on how to act, and like every day things are different and maybe every day is a specific vibe that he has to set. But he has his reading glasses on more frequently, and he will look back over his shoulder where the press are sitting, but not really at anyone anymore. It doesn't feel like he's actually making eye contact with many people. I feel like the first few days, his retinas were scanning. The second week, after the jury has been seated, after opening statements have been stated, defendant suddenly does not know how to eye contact. He does not even know that such a thing is possible. It's very interesting. He will sometimes glance at whatever is in the room, and he will look over the top of his reading glasses, and he just looks like a boomer getting mad at their teenage kids during breakfast. Like that's the feeling. Also, he was seen reading a Bible one day before court was in session, so there is that. And he does seem a bit more energized. Like the whole defense team seems a lot more energized, which is interesting because considering we have witness number 2 that's going to take the stand, and then right after that, immediately after that, Cassie's going to be testifying. And things just keep getting weirder for the defense, but they're in high spirits. I will do attorney updates. One of the sketch artists does compliment Mark Agnifilo on his tie. He stops and he just like has this full-blown conversation with her about like the different shades of blue and which shades of blue that they love. And I always think it's so fascinating that everybody is so calm, everybody is so happy and friendly until they're not. I mean, not that anyone would have any reason to be unfriendly with the sketch artist, except maybe if you're like Sean Combs, which, side note, random lore, there are a few sketch artist legends inside this courthouse, and one of the ones that are doing this case, they drew Ghislaine Maxwell. And Maxwell, during the trial, did not like what the sketch artist was drawing. So she starts drawing the sketch artist, who then draws Ghislaine Maxwell drawing her. And it's just like the weirdest thing ever. And inside the courthouse, when you walk in, there's like sketches everywhere. They're framed and they're hung up of some of the big...
Oh, I did not know that they keep those. That is actually cool. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Ghislaine Maxwell, that she's drawing the sketch artist and the sketch artist drawing her, drawing sketch inception.
trials. Anyway, also the defense starts playing musical chairs. They're moving people around. So right next to Diddy, he's in like And this is so intentional, I believe, because Cassie's going to start testifying soon. He is in a table full of women. He is suddenly sandwiched by women. So you've got lead attorney Mark Agnifilo, and then you have Anna Estavio. I think I'm saying her name right, but she's going to be the one that is cross-examining Cassie.
Haven't heard about her name.
Yeah, she was not as, I guess, in my eyes, as prominent. I'm sure she is a prominent member of the defense team, but and then next to her is Diddy, and then next to Diddy on the left is no longer Boys Club, so it's no longer Diddy and Brian Steele, Young Thug's former attorney. It is now Tenny Garagos. So she swapped with Anna. And
she was on the right first. Now she's over on the left. Okay, it's such a very finicky psychological game that they're trying to play.
then next to her is Alexandra Shapiro. And then now in front, we've got Xavier Donaldson, Nicole Westmoreland, and then now Brian Steele is up at the front. And then in front of them, there's the row of prosecutors. And then the judge walks in. And Judge Arun, I feel like at this point, and again, in like the most professional, sincere way possible, like he is dad. I feel like all of the attorneys are his kids, and he is almost always disappointed in them, is the vibe, because they're just like disappointing him left and right to some degree, some more than others, and he just has to make sure that everything is done correctly and accordingly. But also I love the way that he doesn't converse much with the jurors or the witnesses, but his energy is very sincere anytime they're in the room. And then they leave the room, and he's like disappointed dad again with all the other attorneys. Yeah, so Judge Arun is father at this point. Also, I did notice that Mark Garagos is absent from the courtroom. Mark Garagos is Tenny Garagos' celebrity attorney father. Previously, he and Officer Riz, he's like an officer of the courtroom. He's like the one that...
His name is Riz?
No, his...
I was just about to say, Officer Riz.
His last name has the word Riz in it, so now the RM team just calls him Officer Riz. It's not actually his last name, but that's what we call him. So Officer Riz, he controls the courtroom, okay? The rest of the courtroom outside of the judge. And he and Mark Garagos have this thing where I have no idea if they're like an old married couple that you just cannot tell if they're goofing around, or if they genuinely hate each other and have some sort of massive life insurance plan hidden somewhere. There will be moments where Mark Garagos, who is allowed his phone inside the courtroom because he's counsel, Officer Riz will snap at him to put his phone away, or sometimes he'll snap at him and tell him to sit down when he's standing up, perhaps like at inappropriate times he's standing up. There's one time Officer Riz tells him to sit down across the courtroom, and the Combs sons, they think it's like a blast. They're giggle-gaggling at it. And now he's gone. So I'm like, oh, is it because he wasn't sitting down? I was confused. I look it up. He's on the Menendez case. So he actually went to California for the Menendez brothers case, which, again, that's a whole other thing I can do another deep dive on because they were just resentenced. So that's going on with Mark Garagos. Yeah, they're
So much.
resentenced.
Okay, wait. Guys look absolutely different with shorter hair and with a bald head. Good Lord.
So that's going on with Mark Garagos. Yeah,
So much going on.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with the attorneys, but it's going to progressively get weirder. So a few disclaimers before we get started regarding content warnings. There are themes of essay and DV. Secondly, certain portions and quotes have been shortened and condensed and or combined for brevity. Third, this is a very quick disclaimer, but everything reported on in this episode and throughout the trial is public information. Any descriptions or observations regarding the defendant or anybody else inside the courtroom are personally noted by myself or my two researchers who are also present, seeing these things happen in real time with our own eyes. However, just because we see something and feel something does not mean that our experiences and statements are valid reflections of the truth. Our interpretations of these random things that we see in the courtroom are our own interpretations and opinions, and they are shared for the purpose of reporting on current events. Like, they obviously have no weight or bearing clearly on the verdict of the trial, but also none of this should be used as a definitive source on how someone should feel about the defendant, about any of the witnesses, or about any of the attorneys, or literally anyone, because what do we know, right? Sean Combs is also presumed innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is the responsibility of the prosecution. So with all of that said, let's get into it.
Let's
Now,
go.
super brief recap. We did 4 deep dive episodes into the Diddy case in
And we watched
2024
that.
after his arrest. I feel like there's more than 8 hours collectively on a ton of the allegations, internet speculations, and the unfolding of the arrest. This is now our 3rd episode in the trial. We covered the first witness that was testifying, which is the former security guard at the Intercontinental Hotel. This is the 2nd witness that is brought up to testify. And I will say a lot of the major headlines right now are like the salacious details that this guy has said on the stand. And there's a lot of salacious details, yes. But I feel like people have just kind of went over who this man is. It's very interesting. He walks in through the back doors and we see him walk down the aisle, and immediately he has a very interesting presence. He's also super buff, like just super muscular. And he's walking
what
in
she
like
said,
sometimes
yes.
he'll wear his sunglasses and then he'll take them off respectfully at the stand. But he has a very strong presence, and everybody online has dubbed him the male escort that testified in this case. He states immediately that he met Cassie around maybe 2012, 2013. He had gotten a call from his boss and he told him that, quote, he couldn't find any of our black dancers, which was what was requested. So he asked me if I would mind going down to fulfill an order to have a dancer go down to the Gramercy Park Hotel in New York City for a bachelorette party. I told him I would do it. So he works for like a dancer company, right? He's gonna go there, he's gonna put on a show for this bachelorette party. He's gonna get paid $200 and then he's gonna call it a night and go home. That's the plan. Now, side note, he is supposed to be dressed up as a police officer because
That is the plan. Okay, and cosplay on top of all of that.
that was what was requested,
Okay.
but he didn't have one, like a police uniform, so he just went and bought a NYPD t-shirt. He shows up to the hotel.
Does he know it was Diddy?
No, he does not. So he's explaining the
Oh.
job is, I mean, it sounds relatively simple. He says, quote, I was expecting to do a little striptease, and that was it, just for a bachelorette party. A group of women, and then leave. So he gets to the hotel room around after midnight, so really late.
Oh, God. He was in for a surprise. Wow, okay. Do a little striptease for a couple of bachelorettes.
Gets to the hotel room, knocks on the door.
Okay.
Cassie opens the door, and he does not know that this is Cassie. He just thinks maybe this is the bachelorette. She's wearing a red wig, wearing red lingerie with high heels and dark sunglasses on. He's expecting a bachelorette party, and this feels, I mean, I would assume like the saddest bachelorette party. There's nobody in this hotel room. He says, she asked me if I was okay if it was just going to be us, because I was expecting to see a group of women there, but there was only
empty.
her standing in the door. She asked me to come into the room. She said it was her birthday and that her husband wanted to do something special for her. And so she asked me if I would mind rubbing baby oil on her and giving her a massage. And wherever things went from there, if you know, based on how comfortable I was. He says he walks into the hotel room where there is a whole living room. It's like a suite. There's velvet couches that open up into this larger space.
But that would have already made me very suspicious of the whole thing.
There's a coffee table, and this coffee table, it's just filled with candles lit up all over the coffee table. I would imagine it feels like a seance or something, because it's the rest of the room, he says, is very dark. There's candles lit up everywhere. There's baby oil. There's Astroglide. But probably the most pertinent part of the room to note, and this is according to the witness, he sees a man in the back of the room. So he's assuming this is her husband that she was just telling me about. But this man is wearing a white robe with a bandana over his face and a baseball cap. It's like the weirdest attire. I mean, I would imagine it's kind of terrifying. Regardless, Cassie is reassuring him. You know, she told me that, first off, that I didn't have to worry about anything because her husband wasn't gay. I remember her saying that to me, and he wasn't going to try and touch me or anything, and I told her that's good because I wasn't with that. And then she told me that she knew that my boss told her that she had to give me $200 upon arrival, and at that point, she gave me a few $1,000s and said at the end she would tip me before leaving. Which again, at this point, he doesn't know this
Oh.
is Cassie. He doesn't even really know who Cassie is. Rather, he didn't
Okay.
even know her name at this point. He didn't know who anybody was. He says, I complimented the room, the hotel we were in, and then I asked the guy what he did for a living, and he told me that he was in importing and exporting.
Does he know who Diddy is?
This is where he finds out. So he's like, I love this hotel room. What do you do for work? He says importing and exporting. And there was like a slight, I heard a few people giggling, like slight, like giggles in the courtroom, because it's like such a vague, like it's Diddy. He's like, I'm in importing and exporting.
What is he in and exporting? That is okay. Being that guy must be it must have been such a weird situation. I don't know. I would not have felt comfortable.
And he said immediately upon hearing his voice, like he knew that was Diddy. He knew that was Sean Combs.
Really?
Yeah, he says
Yes?
immediately. His voice is so recognizable, he says.
Wow.
Really?
But he states after this brief conversation, he doesn't want to be like, no, you're not. You're Sean Combs. So he doesn't say anything, I imagine. He and Cassie start rubbing baby oil on each other and then having
Okay.
intimate relations with one another. He's asked by the prosecutor, what was he doing while you and Miss Ventura were having intimate relations? He was sitting in the corner, self-pleasuring. He admits that the whole interaction did not last very long at all. So once they're done, Cassie gives him more money. So he makes like a couple $1,000s that night. And he says that Sean kept
Okay.
asking if he would like to see him again. Like, do you want to see us again? Do you want to see us again? Or some variation of that. And the prosecution asks, and let me ask you, how did you respond to that? I said, sure. And he told Cassie to take my phone number, and she took my phone number, and that was that. He says he's about ready to leave. He's maybe a few
Okay.
minutes out of that hotel room when Cassie, quote, Cassie texted me asking me if I would mind sending her a picture of my private part.
Okay. well, that happened.
And how did you respond? I gave her a picture of my private part. What was the next communication you had with her? She asked me if I could come back upstairs and see her again. And how did you respond? I went back upstairs to see her again.
Wait, so he just left?
Yes.
Sent a photo and
Yes.
went right back?
Yes. So
Like
he leaves.
a few minutes.
Few minutes later, he sends a picture of his private parts because it was requested. And then he goes back up to the hotel room. He goes straight back up there where, again, it's Cassie and it's Sean Combs. And this time he says he ends up staying for a few hours. So what do you remember happening over those few
Okay.
hours? The same thing. It was literally the same exact scene, basically. We rubbed baby oil on each other. We had intimate relations for longer this time. And then I was done. I do not recollect whether or not they gave me anything else after that, money-wise. What was Mr. Combs doing while you were having this sexual encounter with
Well,
Miss Ventura?
the same old,
He was
same old.
self-pleasuring in the corner. Okay, I feel like the prosecutors really want him to keep saying that. I feel like it's pertinent to this case, but also just the constant, very matter-of-fact tone of he was self-pleasuring in the corner watching us is a very interesting thing to just hear out loud over and over again in a courtroom.
Okay.
The second time, he leaves for real, and he says, later, his boss looked up who Cassie was for him, and that's how he found out who she was. He already knew that it was Sean Combs in the hotel room. So every time you met with Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs, what was the purpose of the meeting? Do you have sex with Cassie? In front of who? In front of Mr. Combs.
It was basically always the same. It was just to hook up. Okay. I mean, in the end, that situation, there's nothing wrong with it. It's weird, but if you're making a couple of $1,000, okay. But it is weird nevertheless. For the guy, he never looked deeper into it, so for him it was an okay evening, it was easy money.
He would say that whenever he met them, sometimes they would alert him maybe an hour before or a couple days in advance. He would meet them at hotels. Sometimes he would have to tell the hotel employees, I'm here to see Black. That was like the code word. And then they would lead him to that room, I guess. Maybe that's the name that they book under. He's asked, during your sexual encounters with Cassie and Mr. Combs, generally, how were the rooms decorated? Sometimes sheets or like towels on the couch. The curtains were always shut fully. There was always a table in front of the couch, and there was always candles on that table, and also bottles of baby oil or Astroglide. And then there were a few occasions where they would ask me to actually go to the pharmacy and pick those things up. I guess because they didn't have them at their location. And yeah, the baby oil conversation is brought back up on the internet, but also in the courtroom. The prosecutors asked the witness, across all of these encounters, how often did you use baby oil?
Every time.
Other than the first time at the Gramercy Park Hotel. Who directed you to use the baby oil? Well, are you asking? Okay, I think I understand. So the first time Cassie did, and then I guess we kind of knew what to do after that, but Sean Combs would often tell us, like, y'all need to rub more baby oil on each other. You don't have enough on. So what type of things do you remember Mr. Combs saying to you and to Miss Ventura about the baby oil during these encounters? He would just tell us to put more on. So it appears this is the point where the prosecutors are trying to show the jurors that Sean Combs is the one facilitating and directing these freak-offs. Across all of these encounters after the first one, who, if anyone, gave directions about how to engage in sexual activity? Sean Combs did. What are some of the directions you remember Mr. Combs giving to you and Miss Ventura? He would tell us things like, slow down, you know, y'all stop now, separate from each other, it's getting too much now, it's getting too hot. Y'all, you know, one time he had us try to role play, like we had just met at an airport, and yeah, we were not very good at that at all. So I think we just kind of skipped past that one really quickly. Yeah, but mainly it was more like, you know, don't finish yet, don't finish. If you feel like you're going to finish, don't finish yet, like things like that.
So Sean never
Just the thought of having somebody tell me, no, folks, no.
joined in.
Later, he will explain that it was mainly him and Cassie having intimate relations while Sean Combs is in a corner, self-pleasuring. And then once he's done and finishes, Cassie and Sean Combs will disappear into the bedroom for sometimes hours. And he just like sits in the living room of the hotel suite for hours.
After
Waiting
Sean
on
is
them.
finished.
After he's finished.
Oh, after he is.
Yeah.
I see.
And he doesn't really know what's going on in the bedroom. About how often during these encounters would Mr. Combs tell you to wait to finish? I mean, it was often, but I think he started really directing us from like the second time on. So the first encounter, he didn't really say much to us, but after that, he would tell us to do, you know, after that.
He wanted to have control of the whole thing. Power play once again.
He really would just tell us to like rub each other and like, you know, touch each other. And then he would tell her to, you know, blow me, give me oral sex. I mean, yeah, he would often tell me not to finish, don't finish yet. And if you feel like you're going to finish, stop. So it was more so like where he wanted me to finish. And what do you remember about him? What do you remember him saying about that? He occasionally wanted me to finish on her stomach or, you know, inside and, you know, yeah. Throughout these encounters, what did you observe Mr. Combs doing? He was always sitting in the corner, self-pleasuring. And then occasionally he would tell me to step off and back up because he was going to get some. And then he would start having intimate relations with her, and I would be sitting off in the corner watching. Just. What did Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs usually do after you ejaculated on her? They would get up and go inside of wherever the bedroom was inside the hotel room. And generally, what happened next? I'd be sitting in that room for hours, just sitting there. And then what do you remember happening? Sometimes they would come out and tell me, okay, you can go. And other times they would come out and ask me if I'm ready to go again. About how long did each of these encounters with Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura usually last? Could be anywhere from an hour to 10 hours.
10 hours?
10 hours. So this is like a huge point for the prosecutors, is that these freak-offs would last multiple days. And that for Cassie, for years of her life, it would potentially feel like half of her week is in this horrendous freak-off situation. Wow. How many times, if any, did you pretend to finish, but you actually did not? I think this was on our second go-around. He told me to make sure that I finish inside of her this time, and I went to go, but I couldn't do it. I was in my head or whatever the problem was, but I couldn't finish. And so I just pretended to do it. And they got up, they went into the room, and then Sean Combs came out of the room and he asked me, he said, yo, are you sure you finished? And I said, yeah, I'm positive. And he was like, you sure? And I said, yes. And so they went back into the room, and yeah, that was that. But yeah, they definitely knew. This is the part that has been all over the headlines that
Well, that is, it's a weird situation. I mean, as I said, on the one side, I get the guy returning, but he must have thought at one point, this is just too weird. This is just too crazy. I need to back out. I don't know. It's weird.
I have seen is the prosecutors ask, what, if any, bodily fluids other than ejaculate do you remember there being in these rooms? The witness responds, so Cassie was actually the one that asked me to urinate on her. They had just come out of the room and she asked me if I had ever done that before, and I said no. And she told me to do it, and apparently I was doing it wrong because they both stopped me and told me that I was supposed to let a little out at a time and not go full, like, take a leak on her. Just, yeah,
Okay.
That was just one time that they asked me to do that. What was Mr. Combs doing when you urinated on Miss Ventura? He was self-pleasuring. They also bring up the alleged recording of freak-offs saying, who, if anyone, recorded your encounters with Miss Ventura? Sean Combs. About how many times do you remember Mr. Combs recording you and Miss Ventura during these sexual encounters? Again, I would be estimating, but once or twice. And what do you remember Mr. Combs using to record these encounters? I do believe a cell phone and a camcorder device.
So when he was saying all of this, did you see what Diddy was doing in court?
Yes. Okay. So this is the very
Good
interesting
question.
thing. I think
Good question.
I feel like prior to it really started during opening statements, Diddy just like morphed into a marble statue. Everything became so frozen to the point where it just felt very unnatural. Like I just don't see many people have that level of stillness inside of them.
Yeah. So it
It feels intentional because it doesn't even feel still, it feels rigid.
Yeah.
Right, so it feels intentional. But during these two witness testimonies, we did notice something. So my researchers and I were like, okay, are we noticing the same thing? Because it's so interesting. I feel like every time anybody else is talking, or the judge is talking, the attorneys are talking, they're arguing, they're going back and forth on things, they're like submitting applications, he is rigid, he's statuesque, he's frozen. But during the two witness statements, he would have these moments where his body language feels a little bit more like what people remember Diddy being.
How
So he kind of, instead of having his back off of the back of the chair and being frozen and rigid and looking like the bestest boy at church every Sunday, he starts leaning back towards the chair.
Oh.
He has his, I wrote this down specifically, his right shoulder is down, his left shoulder is up, and his head is kind of cocked to the left. And then there would be some times where during the witness statements, he'll kind of prop his left arm onto the chair. So I can't see that. It looks like either he's putting it on his thigh, or it could be the chair. Or it could just be, it's not leaning on the top of his chair. Like, you know, when people drape their arm on the top of the chair, it's very relaxed, it's very casual.
Yeah.
It could be perceived as like asserting dominance. I don't know, right? It's not like that at all. It's just, it looks like it's maybe propped up on the chair. So you can kind of see his left shoulder propped up.
So very minor.
I mean, but the thing is, after a couple of days, he's trying to get comfortable. I mean, if you sit around for days on end, at one point you can't keep up that rigid pose anymore. I have to give him that. And maybe he was just, you know, like, good God, I have to relax a bit. You know, that's my thought.
Shift, yes,
shift
a
in-
little bit more relaxed. I also did notice, and this could just be my perception of things, more often than not, I do see him lifting his chin up more when he's looking at the witnesses that are testifying. So it's almost like he's lifting his chin and like looking down at them, even though they might be a little more elevated, honestly, than he is. I just see his chin go up more. But I don't know, maybe there's like a reflection on an iPad that's bothering his eye. It could be anything else. I just noted it down because I thought it was interesting.
That helps because now I feel
Yeah.
like I can see that posture.
But he's incredibly stoic. He will have a break from this like stoicism at the end, because he starts doing stuff that I don't even think he realizes he's doing near the end,
From
because
this witness?
Oh,
yes, during cross-examination, because I think
Okay.
things get a little bit crazier. But yes, at this
Okay.
point, he's stoic, but his body language has shifted a teeny tiny bit. Now, there were a lot of things that this witness says that he was very concerned about. The witness states that he did not notice Cassie to be under the influence of drugs except for one time, and it was pretty alarming. He said, I came to a hotel room and Sean Combs opened the door. And when I went inside the hotel room, he closed the door behind me. And then he said to me, I don't think this is going to happen today. And I looked at the couch, and Cassie looked like, to me, she looked like she was completely passed out on the couch, slumped over and half on the couch, half off the couch.
Okay, but at one point that guy must have, wasn't there the thought of saying something? I don't know. I don't know if it's just fear of that powerful person on the other side, But at one point he just should have said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know.
So he said it was very alarming. And there was another time that Sean Combs actually offered him Molly, MDMA, and he is asked by the prosecutors, what do you remember about the time that you were offered Molly by Mr. Combs? I remember they had I really can't tell you who gave me the money, but I'd gotten a couple $1,000s, I guess, after we had intimate relations. I took that Molly, and then I became a totally different person. I went out into Times Square, and I handed out $100 bills to every single person that I saw in front of me.
What?
When you say you became a totally different person, how did the Molly make you feel? It made me feel like a jackass that wanted to go into the middle of Times Square and hand out $100 bills to every person that he saw. Can you describe the sensation of taking the Molly for us, please? I felt sick. Like physically sick, like nauseous, but also I felt euphoric at the same time. But eventually, he says, he starts reaching out to Cassie because he's very worried about her. He says, at some point after things had happened, I always wanted, to know that she was good. I used to try to get to her to text me to tell me that, she was good. And then when she wouldn't reply, eventually I started sending her more vulgar text messages to see if I could get her, more interested to see me again so that I could actually see her in person and know that she was good. When you say that you sent vulgar text messages, what do you mean? I mean, I can recall sending her at least one message telling her,
This is weird. I understand his concern. I don't know where this is going.
You want me to just say it? If you wouldn't mind giving an example, I want to f you right now. And are those the kind of vulgar text messages you would send her? Not often, but once or twice, yeah. To the best of your recollection, did Cassie ever respond to those vulgar text messages? I don't think so. Okay, but why is he scared and worried for Cassie so much that he's sending these vulgar messages to almost bait her into responding? Like, it's a very interesting circumstance to be in. Like, why does he even need to reach out to begin with? Like, clearly something is bothering him.
It is weird.
Yeah.
He tells the courtroom that he starts developing ED, erectile dysfunction, to which he is asked, when was the first time you experienced that sexual performance issue? After the first time that I saw him hit her. He says...
Oh, and right at that point. Okay, so he witnessed some of that. Oh.
He was at Cassie's house, and he's sitting on the couch. Cassie is sitting in front of him on the computer. So there's a little desk facing the wall, but her back is facing him. And Sean Combs is in Cassie's bedroom. They had just gotten done having intimate relations. And he says, well, I had intimate relations with her. We finished doing what we were doing. And then they both went into the bedroom. She eventually came out and she got on her computer. And Mr. Combs was in her bedroom. Cassie was on her computer. And I heard him yell out, babe, come here. I heard Mr. Combs yell out to Cassie, babe, come here. Cassie was on her computer and she said, hold on one second. I have my personal information out on the computer right now. He, Mr. Combs, came out of the room and I just saw a bottle fly past her and hit the wall. It looked like a liquor bottle. And then he, Mr. Combs, walks over to her, to Cassie. He grabbed her by the hair and started dragging her by the hair into her bedroom. And he wasn't saying anything while he was dragging her. She was yelling. Now, side note, the whole time, Sean Combs is just stoic. Again, even during like this.
How can that guy be in the same room and let that happen? it doesn't matter how much money you get for having those intimate relations, but at that point where you see somebody drag a lady across a room by her hair, I would have to stand up and stop that immediately. How?
Very lengthy description of what allegedly took place. Like, he's not moving, he's very frozen. What was she saying? She was screaming, and he, Mr. Combs, pulled her into the bedroom, and I could hear him. What I could hear, what sounded like him slapping her. What else could you hear from the bedroom? She was screaming. What did you hear her saying? I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then he, Mr. Combs, was basically saying, bitch, when I tell you to come here, you come now, not later.
Wow.
How did you react to this violence?
Yes,
I was
please
shocked.
tell me.
It came out of nowhere. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. Did you intervene? No. Why not? Because I knew that the chances that there were 4 or 5 bodyguards and another objection, sustained. So this part, like, they have to keep going with something else. Without speculating about what might have been going on outside of what you could see and what you could hear, can you explain to the jury why you didn't intervene when you heard Cassie crying
Yes,
and what sounded
please
like smacks?
explain.
I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. In my mind, it was going through my head that if I tried to do something, I might lose my life. Objection,
Oh.
overruled. And why didn't you call the police and report what you saw? Again, without speculating. I'm not speculating. I'm just telling you what was in my mind and what I was feeling at the time. My thoughts were that this was someone with unlimited power. Objection, overruled. My thoughts was that this was someone with unlimited power, and chances are that even if I did go to the police, that I might still end up losing my life.
Okay. Wow. That is quite the effed up situation. That is, good God. I'll be right back.
Prosecutor Comey asks, what happened after the beating stopped? Sean Combs and Cassie came out of the room. Cassie was visibly like very upset. She did not look like she wanted to continue doing anything. But Mr. Combs asked, are y'all ready to continue now? And I was, I
Not
couldn't do
really.
anything after that. He says he tried to act like everything was okay. How do you remember that interaction ending? I remember leaving. I do not remember them handing me money, and I probably wouldn't have taken that anyway. Why did you return to meet with Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs again after you witnessed that violence? I've had conversations in between our interactions with Cassie, and I felt like I had started developing at least some kind of friendship with her. I may have been speculating, but it was my way of being able to check on her and know that she was okay. He says that after that, he heard Sean Combs screaming at Cassie once more. He says this was a different incident at the Essex House Hotel. He says the hotel room, when you get to the front door, you walk in and there's a whole bedroom, there's a coffee table, there's like a bathroom in the foyer. And this layout oddly becomes important at one point, but listen, that's for later. What do you remember happening right before you heard Mr. Combs yell? I think we had sex during this encounter. After you had sex, what do you remember? Sean Combs and Cassie were in the bedroom for a while, and I was in the living room. Out of nowhere, I could hear Cassie yelling, I'm sorry, and then I could hear again what sounded like she was being slapped.
The weird thing is that he always had to stay like in the room next door while they were in the other room. He was like sitting out there, looking at the ceiling, listening to the abuse and the screams, and my God, this is weird.
Or someone being slapped around and slammed around the room. I looked around the corner to where the foyer was, and I saw Mr. Combs walk out of the hotel altogether without clothes on. He might have had a towel on, which I guess some people would say is reminiscent to the Intercontinental Hotel video footage.
Yeah.
And then Cassie came running into the living room, and she literally jumped into my lap, and she was shaking, like literally, like her whole body was shaking. Her whole entire body was shaking. Like she was terrified. And what did you say to her? I asked her, why is she doing this? Why is she staying with this guy if he's objection? And the judge asks Attorney Donaldson from the defense, what's the grounds for the objection? Hearsay. Overruled. There's a lot of objections throughout all of this, so I feel like we keep Like, we're trying to figure out what's happening, and then there's objections, and then we keep getting little bits, and then there's objections. Prosecutor Comey continues, can you tell us again what you said to Cassie? I asked her why she was staying with this guy if he was hitting her and beating her like this. And I tried to explain to her that she was in real danger if she stayed with him. And she basically tried to convince me that it was okay. It's okay, I'm fine, I'll be okay. And I just kept trying to tell her that you're not okay and you need to get help. What do you remember happening next? She and I were alone, and this was the first time we were alone. And Cassie is not somebody that likes to kiss. Objection, overruled. So the witness continues.
They do not want any type of emotion to come up. They want to cut out every piece where he starts to get either personal or emotional. But at one point you have to, I mean, there are things happening, right? You have to say some of those things.
During our interactions, Cassie was not a kisser. But in this instance, she just started making out with me.
This is the shivering part?
Yeah.
Or did he just left a
Seems
hotel?
Like it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
and she just started making out with me, and we ended up getting into it. But the fact that I was alone with her this time, I had no problem getting physically capable down there, right? And right when we were actually starting to have intimate relations, I realized that Mr. Combs had re-entered the room, and he was sort of sneaking around the corner and watching us. And once he realized that we could see him, he came into the room and basically was saying, like, yeah, that he liked that. He liked that we were getting along in that way. And what do you remember happening next? I think the second that he came back into the room, I was done again. I couldn't continue. Why didn't you go to the police after this incident? I told you again, I was concerned for my life. By this point, he had taken my ID and taken a picture of it, and I felt threatened by what he said to me. And I felt that at the very least, I could try to get her to realize that she needed to leave and maybe try to help her in that way. There's a few other key events in the witness that he talks about in his testimony. The first being that he states there was another time where he went to visit Cassie and Sean Combs, where he says he walks in and there's a man having intimate relations with Cassie already. He says she was actually giving him like oral. There was a lot of oral activity going on most of the time. And the prosecutor asked, and what do you remember happening during that particular intimate act? The guy kept on looking at Sean Combs in the face, and Mr. Combs turned to him and basically told him, look, motherfucker, you better stop looking at me in my face. And the guy got like real scared, and he's like, I'm not looking at you. And he's like, you better not be looking at me. And Cassie jumped off the couch and like ran to the opposite side of the room. And the guy was just saying like profusely, I'm not looking at you. I swear I'm not looking at you. Which a lot of netizens thought this was kind of an interesting moment. They thought the psychology was fascinating, and I'm not trying to like psychoanalyze anybody because I don't think I have the faculties for that. But a lot of people say it's fascinating because he loves to watch, which would categorize him as what the internet likes to call like but he's someone that you can't even make eye contact with while it's happening. So there's a lot of like psychological, perhaps ego, power, and
right there, ego and power. He wants to have the power over the situation. He wants to tell you what to do. He wants to say, do this, do that, don't finish, don't do this. But if you stare at him, it would be like, look, I'm doing this while you're just sitting there. And he doesn't want to feel that. He can't feel it in his weird mind.
Yeah.
maybe even some shame involved is what I saw.
Yeah, he got real triggered when someone look at him back while he's in the corner.
Which did kind of send me down a spiral reading those comments, because the days that I spent staring at this guy, I feel like this is someone who does not shy away from eye contact, especially at least in the beginning, right? But maybe he just likes eye contact in very specific situations, because now there's like no eye contact with, I feel, not many people. And after Cassie ran away, what do you remember happening next? The guy told Mr. Combs, I'm not looking at you, Mr. Combs. Said, okay, all right, we're here to have fun, not do anything else. And then he told Cassie to come back to the couch, and Cassie asked if they were absolutely positive that they're good now, because she seemed like she was scared to go back to the couch. The witness does testify, and I think the prosecutors are trying to lay the groundwork or maybe even the evidence. They're asking questions to establish the fact that these freak-offs happened for sometimes days at a time.
You just have to wrap your head around the whole situation. The incredible strangeness of it all, the awkwardness of these situations. It is. Wow. And this is, and I mean, this is like two people and one watching. I think this is like one of the more normal things that happened in that whole time. Oh my God.
Is what they argued in even their opening statement, to which the witness talks about how, quote, just times that I would come to the hotel room and there would be like towels on the floor that looked used and bottles of baby oil that were almost finished and Astroglide that was halfway used. And it just looked like, it looked like someone had already been there already. He also states that he was only ever paid for intimate relations, that if he went there without having intimate relations because sometimes he couldn't physically perform, he would not get paid. Furthermore, he states that anytime he would get paid, it was around $700 to $5,000 to $6,000. And though it was mainly Cassie handing him the cash, he states he does remember Sean Combs coming out once and, quote, I remember he came out of the room once and he asked me and the other gentleman if we had gotten our bread. However, he does state that he personally never felt like he was being paid to have intimate relations. Even though he knows that he only got paid for the times that he did have those acts, he says, well, I, for one, was not someone that was getting paid for intimate relations. In my head, I was just excited that I was in this world and, happy to be involved with people with such notoriety. I didn't care if I got paid one way or another. I never asked them for a single dollar. They gave that to me every time that I went to see them. So for me, it was just, this is just something that they do. They have that kind of money. They want to share it with me. I'm fine with that.
And that is where the line is crossed. I mean, you can't be fine with that. After all of the crap that's happening there, you can't be fine with that.
Which at this point, Sean Combs does turn to look. So the jury are all facing the left side of the room. So we're in the pews, we're all facing the judge at the front of the room, okay? Everybody's facing the judge. Sean Combs is facing the judge, the prosecutors are facing the judge. The jury, they're facing the left side. So they're looking at like Sean Combs' side profile, everybody's side profile. But there's a podium right next to the jurors. And that is where the prosecutor or the defense attorney will go up and they will examine the witnesses.
I see.
So it's, at least from where I'm sitting, it was unclear if he's looking at the prosecutor or if he's looking at the jurors. But at this point, when the witness says that, Sean Combs does kind of tilt and do like a small nod.
Wait, I'm sorry. What did he say again?
He says, I was just happy, like they have this money and they want to share this money with it. So it sounds like a very positive thing, slightly so far. This is maybe the only thing that could be interpreted as even remotely positive about Sean Combs in this witness's testimony.
Yeah.
And he turns towards, I don't know if it's towards the prosecutor, I'm imagining it's for the jury, but he does like a small nod. I guess indicating that he too feels like he's just sharing the love through money. I don't know. Now, the witness says he's scared. He says that Sean Combs took his ID, saying it's just in case, and he's kind of freaking out about it. And there were a lot of parts from this witness's testimony that are really transparent to the point that if it were not in this case, in this situation, in a courtroom setting, it could maybe come off as vulgar, perhaps, because it's the truth. It's a lot to hear. Like, people are not sugarcoating the truth in a courtroom. He will testify and state things like, he would tell her to blow me. Halfway into the direct, Sean Combs' daughters, so they're all adults, they just had turned 18 recently, I believe, and they first leave to use the restroom once the testimony starts getting into that area of a lot of explicit details. They come back after the restroom and the testimony is still very sexual in nature, so they leave once more and they don't come back. So they sit out the rest of the testimony.
The three daughters, right?
Yeah, but the mother and the sons, they stay. And that's also been a huge conversation online, the fact that Sean Combs' kids are showing up to support him in court. Typically, netizens say that it's supposed to show that the defendant has a large support group that supports them and believes.
And then they can't stay in because of the whole topic is just too unsettling.
Believes in their innocence most likely is what they're showing to the jurors. Like, I believe this person is innocent and I'm supporting them. However, in this case, netizens think it's telling that the 3 youngest daughters that are barely adults are in attendance, with netizens feeling like if they were Sean Combs, they would bar their daughters, at the very least, if not all their kids, from the courtroom, because they don't want them to experience this level of trauma and like hearing these things being said and the allegations and the accusations. So the sentiment here being the girls being there probably traumatizes them and only benefits Sean Combs. They say that he's not trying to be a good father, but he's just trying so hard to appear to be a good father to the jury. That's why he wanted his kids there. Other people also think that it's weird that his elderly mother is just sitting there listening to witnesses testifying about this kind of stuff. But there have been also lots of stories about his mother perhaps maybe having similar interests. I don't know. Those are allegations. Those are what...
Allegedly, there are so many things going on with his mom. Yes. I somehow hope we don't hear about things about her.
People who personally know the family have been alleging and accusing online. You can find all of that online. I'm not the one alleging this. But one netizen comments, if Diddy's 18-year-old daughters are too young to hear of his DV and SA case, then Cassie was too young to have been groomed and trafficked by their father. So there's a lot of very strong opinions out there on the internet about this. I will say that the family is... Yeah, there's just a lot going on every time the family comes in. Even when they go in and out for lunch, they all get into this like giant van. Sometimes when they leave for the day, this also happens. I think it's one person. I don't know if it's a different person every time. I don't get a good look at their face, but someone is just on a speaker playing Me and You by Cassie. This is like multiple times I've heard and seen like the family, and then you just hear Me and You blasting near the courthouse. And side note, since we're on the topic of the family, I just want to run you through the energy of the family really quick, because there's a lot of energy there. So Christian Combs, this is Kim Porter's first child with Sean Combs. Christian Combs, he reminds me a lot of Sean Combs. In the first episode I talked about, Diddy would do this thing where he looks back and he like holds people's gazes, and then he stopped doing that. But I feel like Christian Combs, he does that.
Really?
He doesn't do it often, but like randomly, he has like this, he turns to the side and he will look back, and it's a very like intense gaze. I don't think he's specifically looking at anyone. I don't think he even means to. He just has very similar mannerisms, I think. He also likes to walk in with his hands in his pockets. So I do think that Christian Combs has very similar energy to Sean Combs. A lot of the time during witness testimonies, I see him putting his arm around his mom. Or not his mom, but Sean Combs' mom. So Christian's grandmother. And his arm is around her, or he's like comforting her somewhat, or he's just like staring off into the abyss or staring at the judge or something. Justin Combs, which is Sean Combs' son with Misa Hilton, I often see him taking notes and also passing notes. And then Quincy, who is Albie Shore and Kim Porter's son, he seems the most locked in, more observant. I don't see him as often taking notes, but he seems like he's very attentive and like paying very close attention to all the things that are happening. So far, this second witness, I feel like he seems very honest, and that is my opinion and perception. Even when he walks into the courtroom, he takes up a lot of space. I'm not really sure how to explain it, because he's not a very tall man. He's kind of on the shorter side. But the way he walks, he's very buff. His shoulders are wide. He gives me similar energy to the security guy, where they just look like they have 100% muscle mass. And all of his answers to questions are incredibly direct. It does not feel like he's trying to shy away from telling us the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. To me, his cadence, to me, in my opinion, does not indicate someone that's trying to remember what to say, and like most of his pauses feel incredibly natural, like he's just trying to recall certain memories and situations. Also, on top of that, I feel like nothing about this is comfortable for him, very clearly, because when he walks into that courtroom, I said there's a presence about him, right? So he walks through the aisle, he walks past Sean Combs on his left, the jurors, 12 jurors on his right. He sits right next to the judge, and that is when his body language completely shifts. When he sits on that witness stand, he's not hiding, but he's so hunched over, you can barely see the top of his head because there's a computer at the witness stand. There's a computer there because they have to show like evidence pictures. You can't even see the top of his head. But when you see other people that are probably similar in height sitting there, you see like a good chunk of their chest, their neck, their head. You just see like the top of his head peeking over the...
I think in the end, he is maybe like, I don't want to call him a broken man, but he is in a way broken. Maybe he's mad at himself for never having tried to change the situation for Cassie. Or because he never really did something about the abuse, you know. I think that is something he's carrying around with himself. Because as he said himself, and there was a friendship growing somewhere. There was concern about her. He was afraid something might happen to her. And with that connection and not having done anything, I guess it was just, he wasn't really feeling good about all of that.
The computer screen. I felt like that in conjunction with the testimony. He looks like he's melting into his chair. It felt very honest. He could be the world's best liar, but to me it just felt kind of honest.
I think it's interesting because that's what your take, right?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe some of the jurors or a lot of them may feel the same way. Like, oh, they can trust what he's saying because that's the energy that they get.
There was not one point where I felt like he was saying something to make himself appear better or to make himself appear more law-abiding. It just felt almost uncomfortably honest.
Right.
Yeah. Like he was tied up to a truth machine, is my opinion. And again, I could be naive, I could be dumb. He could be the world's best liar. But, I mean, he is on the stand. That would be perjury. He's asked, were there times when you texted her and she did not respond? She never responded to my text messages, usually. Like, he's like that honest. So it feels like it's very interesting to see him going into the cross-examination. And the main person that's going to be doing that is defense attorney Xavier Donaldson.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, I do want to preface this before we get into this. He was one of the later additions to the defense team. He joined the defense team days before the trial. Days before the trial. I mean, what are we supposed to expect? Mark Agnifilo was hired a full year ago. So the difference in preparation time is massive. So just keep that in mind throughout all of this, because I feel like even in the courthouse, I have only heard, and this is probably like off the record, I don't even know what that means, right? But I've only ever heard people say incredibly positive things about Attorney Donaldson. But this cross-examination, I could not look away. And this was the first trial that my researchers and I are attending. We obviously watch live streams of trials. We go through copious amounts of court transcripts. So we were confused because maybe...
But just for the record, I think she's doing a really, really good job with this. And it would be nice to see her do that more often, if it's possible for her in her whole time schedule and everything. But she's doing a really good job with this.
Sometimes things don't translate on camera, or maybe sometimes things don't translate on transcripts when transcripts are the only things available. So we were confused on like, is this a normal cross-examination? Because it doesn't feel like it, and it doesn't match any of the other copious amounts of cross-examinations we've seen on other trials that are recorded. My researcher even passed me a note that read, "What is happening?" Because we were a little bit lost. So Attorney Donaldson, I feel like up until now, he's just been like this 6'5" tower.
Wow.
I don't know his actual height. He feels 7 feet tall. He's just impeccably dressed every single day. He's very stoic. You don't see him socializing too much. He appears to be very focused most of the time. This is our first time seeing him in his element. And again, to preface, I don't even think this is his element because he just got on the trial like days before the trial. Like he just got on this case. So he's about to cross-examine the witness number 2. I think that Brian Steele and Xavier Donaldson have similar mannerisms in the sense that when they get to the podium, they like to use their body. I think they're both showmen. And I mean that maybe in a good way. I think in a good way. I think Prosecutor Comey, so this is former FBI director's daughter, Maureen Comey. She's the lead on this. She has her own thing where she is blunt, to the point, very direct, and her cadence is very addicting to listen to. She actually reminds me of the judge. Their communication style, nothing gets lost in translation. Some of the other attorneys, I feel like, maybe I'm dumb, but this feels a little rambly. Like when they're trying to like plead something to the judge. I'm like, I feel like this is like a lot of words happening right now. With Comey, I never feel that.
This is a lot of words happening right now. That is such a good expression. I like that.
Her communication is like so clear, so direct. It's just so, same with the judge is how I feel. Everything's so clear, so direct. They're effective communicators.
And this is like you and the researchers. You guys all feel this way. So you can assume that probably some of the jurors feel similarly.
Yes, and it's not even just us and the researchers, because when I have certain feelings like this, sometimes I'll even like ask other journalists or reporters that are not like like I'm one, but you know, I will ask some of the journalists or reporters that are also in the press, and they will kind of guide me like, yeah, I mean, we all think similar things of A, B, C, or D. I'm not saying they think all the similar things that I think or anything like that. I'm just saying like certain things, Yeah, a lot of them think Comey is very sharp. Yeah. So Tenny is also very eloquent. So Tenny Garagos is on the defense team. Very eloquent, but she doesn't emphasize words as satisfying as Comey does. And it's very interesting because in the next episode, you're actually going to see Comey and Tenny kind of go head to head. And it's almost like it was very interesting to see. But both Steele and Attorney Donaldson give me showman vibes. It's like the whole energy. I feel like Brian Steele has, let me explain. This is like how I felt it went down. He walks up to the podium. He takes his time.
Donaldson, you're talking about?
No, Brian Steele.
Brian Steele, okay.
He walks up to the podium. He takes his time. I don't know if that's the intention, but it feels like it naturally builds tension.
Yes.
It feels.
That's what he's aiming for. Most definitely. He knows what he's doing. That is like one of the oldest strategies in general. You go up there and you feed that anticipation of the people. You just let them anticipate just a second more and one more until that need for what's about to start is at its peak, and then he starts. That's an old strategy.
Feels like he's only going to start when he's ready. Like he uses a lot of power poses as well, but I don't know why when Brian Steele does it, it feels so natural. Like I'm telling you, like the hands on the hips, blazer popped open, hip to the side. He does all these power poses that I feel like if any other guy did, a lot of people would be like, ugh, ick, right? But he does it in a way where it almost comes off like dad vibes.
Yeah, because even like, you know, the viral clips of like...
Yeah.
Like what
truly humble under God.
Yeah, the way he delivers that.
He's so passionate.
Yeah, it's like, right? It's so much conviction in that is... That's the trick, I guess.
Yeah.
He would be truly humble under God. That's what thug means.
That is the most stupid explanation for Doug. It is not an acronym for truly humble under God.
I do feel that he appears like the most genuine out of the defense team, and I don't know if genuine is the right word. Like he just feels very passionate when he does talk.
He's committed.
Yeah, he's very committed to whatever the bit is, whether it's a bit or not, right? But he uses a lot of power poses. He puts his arms on his side. His chest is always up and out. And I don't know if it's the fact that I know he lives in Atlanta. I don't even know if he's from the South originally, but it gives me like a Southern gentleman vibe. As for Attorney Donaldson, he gives me more of like a polished aura about him. When he talks, he likes to have both of his hands in the air. So his palms are facing him, open hand. And he does this a lot where he's like asking questions and he'll like push the air away, push the air in. So it's like back and forth. Like come closer, go away, come closer, go away. That type of feeling.
Okay.
But I'm just going to be so for real about this. I don't even know where to start. The word of the day is correct. And we counted because I don't know why.
Correct.
I don't know why. Why do we count? We are annoying people who calculate what a pen-size amount of a stack of cash would be. But we counted, and this is the span over cross-examination that's lasted 2 days. So it didn't last 2 full days, but it was like the later part of one day and then the beginning of one day. So the first day, it was around 97 corrects. The second day, it was around 115 corrects.
You just keep saying correct.
In this total cross-examination, I would safely say that Attorney Donaldson said correct 200 times. And the way he does it is not like he's saying correct.
I guess that's correct. If she says so.
Like affirmative. Yes. He would do this thing where he will say, then you opened the door, correct? Then you went into the room, correct? And it was just like this very interesting cadence that was, to me, in my opinion, felt very hard to follow.
Yes. So, I don't like people like that. If somebody comes up, asks me a question, and at the end of the question, like adds this, correct? Or am I right? Or, that is...
When Attorney Donaldson gets up onto the podium, he's everywhere but on that podium. He is not really using that mic. He's looking around the courtroom a lot. At one point during cross-examination, and we all wrote this down, it looked like he, mid-question, like looked out the window and then bounced back into the question, but there was like a slight pause and he was looking out the window. I don't know if he was looking out the window or if he was looking at the jurors. There's a window behind them. It was just, there was so much, it was so hectic. The whole he's taking off his glasses, putting them back on, but not necessarily to read anything. And I do feel like this with the whole defense team.
So are you saying like he's doing a lot, but not delivering
yes,
a lot?
It felt kind of like what you expect from a crime show. This is a side note about the whole defense team. I don't know how reading glasses work, but we're all confused about how their reading glasses work, like all of them. Brian Steele, Sean Combs, Xavier Donaldson. Feels sometimes sporadic. Okay, so the glasses are coming off, they're coming in, they're like, he's holding them with both arms behind his back, holding his glasses, he's moving side to side, he's doing like almost a 360 where he's turned his full body to the defense, because the juror's on the other side, then he turns it towards the family, that side, and then even like towards the press. I don't think, again, he's not specifically looking at the press, that's not what I'm indicating, but like, his body is moving a lot. He's turning up. Some points he looks up at the ceiling.
Does it look like he's nervous, or does it look like that's just how he always is?
I think he is nervous. I think that he was not given adequate time because he just came onto the case.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give you a highlight overview of the cross. Attorney Donaldson asks a question to the witness, basically asking if his job was to help develop the website for the male, I guess what the public has been dubbing male escorts that he works for, and to make it more popular. So he's basically saying, like, aren't you there to help this website get more popular and gain traction? And the witness states yes and no. And he responds, well, yes, now. And then he's about to ask a question, but the judge has to stop him and say, quote, the jury should disregard counsel's last statement and there should be no statements. There should just be questions. So it just feels like he's making interesting, I don't want to say mistakes.
So he's not supposed to make statement. It should be a question, but he made a mistake of stating a statement.
Yeah, and then mid-questioning, he'll just be like, can I have a second, please, Your Honor? It just felt like he was very underprepared. At one point, the witness even asks the attorney, you're asking that question not in the right way. If you would like me to specify, I will. Like, it just...
The witness is correcting him.
The witness was going off on the attorney. It's so interesting because he is, the prosecutor's witness. So obviously he's going to have a much friendlier relationship usually with the prosecutor. And when prosecutor Maureen Comey is asking him questions, a lot of the times, if it's a yes or no question, he will respond like, yes, ma'am, or like, no, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll elaborate. But with Attorney Donaldson, he's like pretty hostile, but understandably so, I think. He's just like, that is correct. That is incorrect. He's snappy with it.
That's correct.
So Attorney Donaldson asks, then when you met with Cassie Ventura on that first day, you were not going for prostitution, correct? Correct. You were going to optimize the lady's experience, correct? I have no idea what that means. You have no idea what the company's slogan that you worked for means? In regards to me going there to optimize the ladies' experience, I don't know what you're referring to. Can you be specific with your question? Yes, the company's slogan was to provide the ultimate ladies' night experience, correct? That was the company's slogan, yes. Some questions were just going over what I felt like we already knew. You worked for the company, correct? Correct, yes I did. The company sent you to a lady that night, correct? Yes, they did. So you were going there to do the ultimate ladies' night experience, correct? I certainly was going there to give a great experience, yes. For a ladies' night, for a lady, correct? For a bachelorette party is what I thought it was, correct.
So are you saying that a lot of these questions never lead to anything? The feeling is like it never
feels
landed?
like it.
Okay,
yes,
so there were so many parts where I'm like, but you know what? I'm not an attorney. Maybe these attorneys are so smart they're 10 steps ahead and we don't even know the end game, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think the jurors are not attorneys. The jurors are like, I'm a juror, basically. No, okay.
But those questions felt like 10 steps behind and not 10 steps ahead. They were like stomping in one place.
I'm not a juror on this case, but in the sense of like, I am a normal human being without law school experience.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that I would have a perception maybe similar to jurors rather than attorneys. Because maybe attorneys in the comments, you're like, oh no, he's doing this because of A, B, C, and D, and E, and you can elaborate, and I would love to read those comments. But as someone with no legal experience, I'm like,
what are we doing?
I don't understand what's going on.
By the end of it, did you figure out what his goal is? What angle is he going in?
By the end of it, he made me feel more confident in the witness.
Cross-examination made
the witness more credible to me, in my opinion.
Correct,
and the witness's tone is a lot more assertive and firm. Like, no, yes, like, no.
Then that might just have been the plan.
Oh, I just told you. So it feels like he knows what's going on.
Right.
Donaldson also kept asking questions that the witness would say is incorrect, but it wasn't ever clarified. So it just made me feel like...
What do you mean?
He'd be like, didn't you do this? Correct? And then he'd be like, incorrect. And then they would never really clarify.
Right.
So I'm just like, okay, where is he getting that information from? Is he just getting wrong information? Is he, what's happening right now? It just didn't make any sense. And again, maybe I'm done. Maybe attorneys can leave in the comments for me and like help us out because we were scratching our heads over it. And another example, the defense attorney would ask, sir, isn't it actually a fact that Cassie Ventura called you on that first incident and told you to come to the Gramercy Hotel? That is incorrect. Isn't it a fact that Cassie told you to come to the Gramercy Hotel and ask for a person named Black? Later on, but not to the Gramercy Park Hotel, no. Isn't it true that Cassie called you on the phone and told you that I'm celebrating something for my birthday and my husband wants to give me something special? Isn't that correct? That is not correct. Would you like me to? No, I don't. Okay.
What? No, I don't.
So at this point,
we yes, I hear you. And then now I want to know exactly when is that event or why is it incorrect? But they never clarify.
Yeah, and then, but actually, this whole thing was spoken about when the prosecutor were doing their direct. So Comey was asking, and he was saying that he went out because his boss called him and said, hey, can you do this bachelorette party because they want a black dancer? We don't have any black dancers right now except for you. Can you go? He bought an NYPD shirt. He knocks on the door. She opens with red lingerie. Do you remember? Yeah. And then now the line of questioning is like, she called you to come to the hotel and ask for Black. And he's like, no, not the Gramercy Hotel.
My boss called me.
Yeah, so it's like we just heard the story in a different format, and then now it's like, wait, I'm so confused. Like, I felt confused because I'm like, weird. I don't know if he's talking about what we just talked about, but like, that doesn't sound right to me either.
Yeah. Like, why is he asking a different story right
now? And then I'm like, is there something I don't know? Like, did the witness say this at a different time where he said a different story? I don't know, but it just didn't. Maybe. It was weird. And then there's also just really strange geographical lines of questioning that made me feel like I'm just trying to put a puzzle together in my mind and it's not working. Now, when you got to the hotel room, I believe you said, according to you on your direct, you arrived at the front door and I believe you knocked on the door. Is that fair to say? Correct. When you knocked on the door, someone answered that door. Is that fair to say? Correct. This person that answered the door was a beautiful woman. Would that be fair to say? Correct. And you recall that in your mind, there was a beautiful woman opening the door, correct? Correct.
It's the same question in 3 formats.
Yes,
Yeah, and she was
yes.
wearing a wig at that point, correct? Correct. And at that point, prior to you, well, strike that. You hadn't talked to her about money, correct? You didn't talk to her about how much you would get paid for coming there, correct? So when you knocked on her door, Cassie brought up to you something about money, correct? Correct. And that is before you had intimate relations. Correct. So then at that point, Cassie gave you money, correct? Yeah, correct, correct. So it's...
Yeah, correct. My God, this is a weird
As
cross-examination.
soon as you knocked on the door, she opened the door and you had a conversation about what? You're asking me? Yes, when you opened, sure. You knocked on the door, right? Sure. Is that right? That's correct. She opened the door, correct?
Oh my God.
Correct. You saw a beautiful woman there, correct?
You're kidding me.
Yes, correct.
The back to the door?
Yeah. You know, I was getting a little bit confused because, again, maybe there's something I'm missing because I'm not an attorney. And I do look over and there are, well, I don't know if I should go that in depth, but there are other reporters on the other side. And I just see one of them, and this could be a coincidence. This could be absolutely nothing. He could just be really tired because I think everyone in that courtroom was tired. He's just like rubbing his eyes. He starts from his nose bridge using his 2 fingers, rubbing his eyes for a good minute. This man was in distress and he's just reporting. It was very frustrating.
How about Diddy's team?
Oh, I don't want to start drama. Not that they would even watch this, but...
That was the best. Oh, wait. wait.
Reporting. It was very frustrating
How
because...
about Diddy's team?
Oh, I don't want to start drama. Not that they would even watch this, but...
What, they were reacting to this too?
Sean Combs was very reactive.
Really?
Not at this point, but he gets even more reactive later. But this is when I say that his statuesque thing, I felt, is something that's strategic for the courtroom because he was no longer statuesque. He was doing what I can best describe as a 3-point look, which is he's looking at the witness, in my perception, and this could be false. This is just what I felt and what I perceived with my own 2 eyeballs. He's looking at the witness. I feel like he glances at the jury, and then he looks at Attorney Donaldson in like a 3-point, what the hell look. Like, what?
Okay.
Like, oh my God,
And I'm paying for all this stuff.
everything is falling apart type of look. And then he would just look at Attorney Donaldson. There's one point where clearly, I mean, everyone on the defense is like waiting for certain moments and they know what the key moments that they're trying to hit during this cross is. Donaldson asks the witness a question. Well, it's a statement plus correct question mark, right? And I do think that the response that they were, I don't even remember the question. It was not that important of a question, or at least I felt, to me, it felt insignificant because I don't recall the question. If it was that important, I do think I would recall that question clearly, right? But Attorney Donaldson asks a question, correct? And at this point, Sean Combs, he turns his body to the jury and he's staring at the jury. He's alert. His back is straight. He's like a Boy Scout on command, okay? He's ready to I don't know. Yeah. But then the witness says incorrect. And you see, I saw Sean Combs' eyebrows scrunch. And then he sits, leans back again, turns away from the jury, and he looks incredibly confused. So I think this was all a rehearsed thing for the defense. Like, okay, during the cross-examination, we're going to ask him this, and he's going to say correct.
And that's how we get him.
Yeah, that's the mic drop moment. That's what it felt like. And then they got hit with the incorrect.
And you don't even remember what
Because
it was.
it did not feel like a significant question. I think the problem was the cadence, the flow of the cross. I don't even remember much.
The problem, I think, was all of these useless filler questions, seemingly useless, because as she said, we're not professionals there. We don't know where they're going at with asking the same question over and over and over again. But yes, after a while, you get you get numbed by all these seemingly stupid questions.
To re-go through the transcripts because I'm like, I don't even know what happened.
How many hours were the first day for that? Like he was asking these questions for how long?
Maybe like 40 minutes.
So the 40 minutes he's just asking, correct?
Yeah, and then like all the questions, I didn't get a setting. I didn't even know where we were. It was just like, where are you in relation to the couch? You're here, correct? Like it was very confusing. I'm like, wait, which incident is he talking about again? And then by the time I'm like, oh, he's talking about that, it would be a completely different thing that he's like, correct? And then it was just so, the pacing was so strange that I didn't know what was happening most of the time.
Got it. So you're confused. You're lost.
Yeah.
And she was, I bet she was not the only one who was confused. I mean, the jurors are sitting there. And
You didn't get the point.
No.
And then.
No. Yeah. And then he'll say things like, okay.
Oh my God. No. No. Oh my God, poor Stephanie.
And then now, let's get the image right. You were in the hallway, correct? Yes, correct. She's in the door, correct? Correct.
Correct. She was beautiful, correct? Correct. She had a red wig on, correct?
And at that moment, she hands you the money. She invites me into the hotel room. I go into the room. She closes the door behind me. And then she says to me, your boss told me that upon arrival, I have to give you $100 or $200. And I said, correct. And then she handed me about $4,000 or somewhere around that ballpark. $4,000? Roughly. And this is all before any oil rubbing, correct? Yes, correct. Before any hugging, is that correct? That is correct. Before any kissing, is that correct? Correct. Then it just starts kind of getting weird. Now, she was standing in, I believe you said lingerie? Correct. She had on heels, correct? Correct. She was just lingerie, heels, and a wig, correct? And a pair of dark glasses. And a pair of dark glasses? Correct. Later, he says, after you got the money, then you looked to the right and saw a man sitting in the chair. That is incorrect. You looked to the left and saw the man sitting in the chair. After she handed me the money, we walked into the room, fully past the hall, past the little hallway that was there, toward the couch that was in front of us with the candles and everything on it. And then I looked to the left, and on the right side of the room, if I'm facing Mr. Combs was sitting in the chair with a robe on, hat, and a bandana over his face.
Yeah, I feel like I recall that better than what. That's what I pictured.
Okay. Correct.
Yeah. So now, while you were standing there with Cassie, and after you received the money, you were going to start rubbing baby oil on her, correct? Correct. She began rubbing baby oil on you, correct? Correct. And this is while she still had on her lingerie, correct? At that point, at some point, our clothes were off. She wasn't rubbing baby oil on me with my clothes on. Let's walk through it. Sure. So you get in there, you have, I'm sorry, I forgot this part. You were wearing a New York City Police Department shirt, correct? That's correct. At one point, the witness even says, if you don't mind, could you please talk into the microphone? I can hardly hear you when you step away. Because at this point, he was like moving around a lot. He would kind of, it's like when in the movies you see like he would have his arms behind his back holding his glasses, and then he would kind of pace, and he would look at like 3 different people in the room. And then he'd be like, is that correct? And then everyone's like, we can't hear you.
Yeah, and then he's not asking anything
and then,
deep. It's just, your name is John, correct?
Yeah, and then he asks, and you took the oil off in front of Cassie, or you went somewhere else to do that? I took the oil off? I'm sorry, you took the shirt off in front of Cassie. I took my clothes off in front of Cassie, yes. So at that moment, you got the money. You then took off all your clothes, correct? At the moment I got the money, I did not take off all my clothes. After you got the money, you had a conversation first. She walked me into the hotel room, and then after she had already explained to me, hey, listen, it's my birthday. I want, to do this instead of the dance, the bachelorette party. I want you to rub baby oil on me, rub me down, give me a massage, and wherever things go from there, whatever you're comfortable with, we can do. And so I told her when I was comfortable with giving her that massage and rubbing her down, and I asked her if she wanted me to do the same, like to remove my clothes as well. And so I stripped down as well to my underwear. Okay, so you stripped down to your underwear, and at that point, she's rubbing baby oil on you. I'm rubbing her down, and then she starts doing the same to me, and it started getting intimate, and when you say it started getting intimate, you mean that you're rubbing her down, you're rubbing her breasts, you're rubbing her whole body down, correct? After she started touching me, yes, I started touching her erotic.
This is very weird. This almost feels a little bit icky,
As well. And at that point, Mr. Combs is in the corner. He's not saying anything, correct? No, he's in the corner, self-pleasuring immediately. Okay, and while Cassie is rubbing you down, it appears that she's enjoying herself. Would that be fair to say? Yes. And you are rubbing her down, and you are enjoying yourself, correct? Yes. So I think at this point, the line of questioning is to prove that perhaps, like, I guess the point trying to be made by the defense is that Cassie seemed to be enjoying it. So it was something that she wanted to participate in. But I think it just gets lost in the sauce. Yes. And then that's why you're saying it started getting intimate, correct? Correct. Because you started getting sexually aroused, correct? Absolutely, yes. Other confusing parts, Donaldson asks, and at some point she took off your underwear, correct? I took off my underwear. You took off your underwear, correct? Correct. I think
it starts getting really, really stupid then. You know, you say something, I'm drinking my cup of coffee, and the guy next to you says, you're drinking your cup of coffee now, correct? Said, oh, this is getting rough.
These parts were made more dramatic by the fact that I feel like Attorney Donaldson's cadence always feels like there's about to be a mic drop moment. The way he paces, the way he looks at the ceiling, looks around at the room. I'm like waiting for a bomb to drop. Like, okay, the next question he's asking, like, we're about to uncover something that is drastically going to change the case as we know it. Only for the witness to just quickly and bluntly tell him, yeah, no, that's not what happened. Other notable parts, mid-question, someone sneezes in the courtroom. Attorney Donaldson stops mid-question to say, bless you. And I don't know, the whole cross-examination, I think, like I said, the direct examination by the prosecutors felt vulgar in the sense that he's stating what happened, and sometimes what happened is not family-friendly, and it's not the easiest things to hear, and sometimes you do have to use explicit words because there's no better way to clearly communicate exactly the events that occurred. But I felt like with the cross-examination, things just got really vulgar. Like, a lot of the headline moments come, I think, from the cross-examination, and it just felt like I didn't understand why it had to get so weird. For example, Attorney Donaldson asks, and after you took off your underwear, I imagine at that point she is still rubbing you down, correct? We're rubbing each other down. She was rubbing you down after you took off your underwear, correct? Correct. And she started massaging your down there, correct? I don't recall.
Did he use the terms? Okay.
I don't recall like the particulars of how that happened. I just know that we ended up having sex. Okay, so you didn't have intimate relations standing up, correct? No. Okay, so after you were standing up, you then laid her down on the couch. Is that fair to say? Correct. And then intimate relations occurred for, I believe you said, well, not believe, but approximately 30 minutes, correct? No, the first time, that was probably the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. That was really fast. So when you say the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, that caused you to finish fast? Yeah. Were you on top of her or behind her at this point? I have no idea what time frame during this you're referring to. This could be at any point in the interaction. In the Gramercy Hotel, when you received $2,000, were you on top of her, behind her? What happened? Are you asking when I finished? Yes. What position I had her in? I asked that. It was missionary. It was a missionary position. Later he asks, okay, she also asked you to send a picture of your...
It almost feels like that guy's going home with all the info he had and is going to do the Diddy in the corner thing, you know. It just... that attorney just sounds like, yeah, I need all the spicy info I got. I need some movie for my head tonight. I don't know. He just feels utterly weird.
Down there, correct? That is correct. And she also informed you that you had the largest down there that she had ever seen before, correct? That is correct. And she had said that to you also while you were having intimate relations with her the first time, correct? That is correct. So the first time you were having intimate relations with her, you were not only aroused at her beauty, she was aroused at the size of your down there, correct? I get the point that he's trying to make, but it just didn't hit. At least for someone that's not of a legal background and just like a regular schmegular person.
Yeah. Okay, so like you said, he's trying to say that, Cassie liked this encounter.
Yes, that's the point he's trying to make, but I think the way he's phrasing it almost felt kind of gross, like, like behind her. Yeah, like she said, you had, I don't know. I do feel like there would have been better ways to phrase it, which would also help the defense case.
Yeah.
He also asks questions that again, I think the defense is trying to prove that Cassie was involved in facilitating, orchestrating, and I guess they're trying to say that she liked and wanted these freak-offs. But I just don't know if this is like... It doesn't make sense to me why they're asking him this question. They would ask, she also paid for this hotel visit with her credit card, correct? He's like, I don't know what she paid for with the hotel. I have nothing to do with that. Well, you did learn from your boss that Miss Ventura paid for this hotel stay with her credit card, correct? That's not correct. She paid for the dancer to come to her with the credit card. I have no idea who paid for the hotel. I mean, honestly, it got to the point where I did think maybe the defense was playing chess. I'm like, maybe they're stalling or something. Because I'm like, maybe, because the next witness is Cassie. So I thought, but like, I didn't understand what they could possibly be stalling for. And like, there was no way that this was going to continue going on. So it just didn't really make sense.
So the cross-examination is not doing them any favor.
Yes, but maybe, again, I don't know, maybe this is going to come up later and then it's going to come full circle and I go, oh, okay, so that's why they were asking these, what I thought were odd questions.
I'm wondering if that ever comes around full circle. It does not sound like it in any way.
But near the end, there's this moment where this is like the second day. Everything is quiet. I think Attorney Donaldson was like in the middle of trying to think of his next question or like going through a paper or something.
Correct.
And you just hear the sketch artist sketching away. Like you just hear, because they have this giant poster board and they chalk the background and everything. So there's a lot. So there's a lot of chalk noise. It's like, and they're clearly drawing him. And if it were,
did you see the finished drawing?
Yeah. And if it were me, I would be very stressed as well because it's a lot of pressure, I assume. But at this point, the judge requests a sidebar where there's white noise playing. So anytime there's a sidebar, the attorneys from both sides and the judge will go to a corner of the courtroom.
So what situation would they request that?
It's just when they don't want a juror, like usually like problems with something that's happening that they don't really want the jurors to know. So there's white noise playing, right? But some of the sidebars are included in the court transcripts because they're not sealed, like it's not
confidential.
Yeah.
So they don't want the jurors to know.
To hear. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but you guys also couldn't
No,
hear.
they play white noise, yeah.
Why wouldn't that just be in a small adjacent room? It wouldn't even have to have a door or something, just like an adjacent room with a curtain or so where they go in, do their thing and come back out. Why is it just in the corner of a courtroom?
But with the transcript, know what was said.
So this is included in the court transcript for that day. But the problem was Attorney Donaldson is questioning and he's pointing out what he believes are inconsistencies. So he has the witness's testimony from an interview that the witness did in 2024 with the prosecutors. And then his recent testimony, like a few hours ago, and they're saying there's slight inconsistencies.
I see. Oh, that's why he was so confident because everything is based off that 2024.
Yeah. So he's saying like the witness allegedly in the 2024 interview said that he felt jealous once when Sean Combs and Cassie were having intimate relations without him participating. But then this time he said that he was never jealous when Sean Combs was having intimate relations with Cassie because they would go into the bedroom for hours at a time, right? So he was trying to point out that inconsistency, but he had that paper of the original interview on the podium, which I said is right next to the jurors, okay? Now, the judge is asking him, because the judge requested a sidebar, all right, do you have the document like right in front of the jury that you're reading from? I have it to the side so I can read. I'm trying to make sure that you can't do that. They can't see the document, Judge. It's right in front of the juror. Okay. Prosecutor Comey says, Your Honor, I just realized that Mr. Donaldson had his papers on the bar right in front of the jury throughout the cross-examination.
Like literally they can see it that close by?
It's really close. I don't know if any of them were trying to read it. I don't think anyone read it. And I'm sure you'd have to have some. Attorney Donaldson tries to explain, I'll do whatever I can to make sure that the juror can't see it. It wasn't my intention to do that, so it's clear about that. And just the rest of the cross-examination is...
Oh, that's what they want to discuss.
Yeah.
Like, is that paper visible to them. Okay.
And then the rest of the cross-examination is uneventful, except the whole time he's getting stared down by Sean Combs. And Sean Combs is doing the three-point look, the witness, what I think is the jury, and then Donaldson. It's like he's watching a third party at this point. He's jotting down notes. He's got his eyebrows furrowed. In fact, anytime the defense, this isn't even just Attorney Donaldson, anytime the defense looks a little less prepared or their objection gets denied or their applications get denied, the way Sean Combs looks at them is like, what am I paying you for?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going through his mind. Bro, I just transferred you $10 million. What are you doing? well,
like it's a very like, hello.
Very
like
obvious.
It just looks like hello. And I do think like it's unfortunate, and I think it's interesting how fast emotions change in a courtroom. Because when we do research on these cases and we're reading court transcripts, and even when we're watching live streams of everything that's happening in court, it's so very easy to hold on to emotions. I don't know why, right? But when you're I think it's like energy. When there's a collective energy that shifts, it's so hard to fight against it. So during the direct examination by the prosecutors, it was really depressing to hear about all the times that he alleges that he saw violence against Cassie, and it's shocking, it's salacious, but it's really heavy.
Yeah.
And then the minute that cross-examination starts, it just feels like kind of frustrating and confusing. So it's like very weird how many emotions I feel like people go through just watching what's happening in court. We're not even involved, but to watch, it's like a collective emotion. So I do think it's frustrating that emotion dissipates, and I wonder if that same thing happens for the jurors.
Right.
If they feel like a sense of anger and like, oh, this is bad, and then the cross-examination happens and they're like, what just happened? And so they lose that, oh my gosh, this like emotional testimony, and then it just turns into, what was that?
Maybe that's their strategy.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Now, during the prosecutor's rebuttal, Comey asks a series of questions that do kind of do what I think she intended. I mean, there were statements. She's asking questions, but there were statements made. She says, so let's break it down. So she's back.
She's back.
Who would direct you and Cassie to rub baby oil on each other? Sean Combs. And who would direct Cassie to perform oral sex on you? Sean Combs. Who would direct you and Cassie to have intercourse with each other? Sean Combs. Is Sean Combs the same man who threw a liquor bottle across the room when Cassie asked him to wait a minute? Yes. Is that the same man that grabbed her by the hair and dragged her to the bedroom? Yes. Is that the same man who called her bitch while you heard her say I'm sorry and heard smacking sounds? Yes. Is that the same man who then came out of that same room and asked you and told you and Cassie, in essence, to have intimate relations again? In essence, yes. There is a brief argument on the fact that the witness did send a text message to Cassie saying that he loves Cassie and Sean Combs, which in another redirect, Prosecutor Comey asks him, why did you send that text message? Because I was trying to get her to respond to my messages. She would not respond to my messages, and the only way that I could see if she was okay was to try and bait her into making her. And Mr. Combs believed that I had no problem with what he had done so that they would invite me back so that I could see for myself that she was okay. No further questions. And then Attorney Donaldson moves to strike.
It's just a very, very complicated situation. Just this one guy. And there are so many still ahead of us. Oh my God. Okay.
And there is, here's the thing about Prosecutor Comey. I don't know this woman. I think so far, I really don't know anything about her background. From what I've seen in like the past week, she's so sharp. And she does not emote. When she talks, she does not emote. I mentioned that in the last episode. However, if you say something that I think that she perceives as dumb, which is probably everything because she seems very intelligent, she emotes. So she asked this last question, not even going to the podium. So it's like a quick rebuttal that she does on the prosecutor's table. So she's at the very first row and Donaldson is behind her and then I'm behind them. Not like immediately, but like all the way in the back of the room. So I can see both of their faces when they turn around. Like when Comey turns around, I can see her face, right?
Yeah.
And he says, move to strike. And
wait, what did she say?
She said like, oh, why did you send that text message? And then he says, I just wanted to make sure that she was okay. And she says, no further questions. Donaldson says, move to strike. The judge says, on what basis? Donaldson says non-responsive, right? He wants the jurors to forget this information, right? And he's like, on what grounds? Yep. And I guess whatever grounds he's saying doesn't make sense because Comey turns around and the way she looks at him, I wish I had a more professional way of like describing it, but it's like, hello?
Like, this is ridiculous.
like,
no? Like,
are you thinking? Are you thinking? Am I thinking? Who's thinking right now? Like, that's the vibe she gives me. Yeah.
So, and then?
She says, it's totally responsive to why he did send that text, Your Honor. And so the judge overrules. And it's just like very interesting. The way, like, she never emotes until an attorney does something which she might perceive as dumb, and then suddenly she cannot hide her emote. Her emote is emoting so strong, like it like is a lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a, are you dumb? Look.
The emote is smacking. There's the mic drop you wanted. The emote mic drops, basically.
Like, I don't know how else to describe it. That's the
So she has two modes, either blank.
Effective communicator, but blank, or are you dumb?
And then what did Donaldson say or do after?
It was just overruled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just
that was the end
okay.
of this.
Yeah, but it was it seemed very tense for the defense during that time. But not as tense as it's about to get, because after this cross, there's a quick break, a group, and we go outside the courtroom, and there's this little, I don't even really know what to call it. It's just like an open area, and then the elevators and the restroom. But in that open area, there's a group of maybe 10 people, and they're standing outside, right outside the courtroom, and they're either arms on each other's shoulders, kind of like a football huddle style. Some of them are just holding hands, and they are in a prayer circle. At least that's what it looks like. And it's all Sean Combs' family. Because now...
Oh, the whole family went out already?
Yeah.
Oh, during the break, you say?
Yes.
Because
and
now
they
it's
are
Cassie's turn.
in a prayer circle, huddled together, because Cassie is about to start testifying. And that is where I leave you. And I am going to go through Cassie's direct and her cross-examination, which actually hasn't happened at the time that I'm filming this. I literally have to go to court in like 2 hours. So that'll be the next part of this, everything that's been going on with the trial. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. And again, these are just my perceptions, my observations, my opinions. And I do think that Attorney Donaldson is... I think he has accomplished probably more in one day than I will do in a lifetime. I do think that it's very unfair that he was added on to the case so late. I think if he had a year, as some of the other attorneys on the defense had, I think he would have, I don't want to say he would have nailed the cross because that's weird, but I think he would have performed at his normal scale. You know, because I've only heard very good things about him. But that was just my opinion of this very isolated event. So what are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.
Wow. Yes. This is crazy. The situations are just so awkward and weird. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this guy, this escort, didn't he feel weird at one? I mean, okay, he said it was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, and he comes there, he gets, you know, he can do all of that. But at one point when he sees who and what happens and how and just being quiet is, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in that situation. I don't want to judge, but it does feel weird. And I mean, this cross-examination at the end, that was hilarious, correct? No, but I really am looking forward to the next episode when Cassie's finally gonna speak. Yes, that's going to be, I think that's going to raise the level of not only awkwardness, but of disgust and of emotions and everything. It's just going to raise the bar for everything. My God. Wow. Folks, thank you all for sticking around. For those of you who are still here, many, many thanks. Please take care out there. Stay safe. And as I always say, saranghe aniyong. Until the next time.